bring things that will help Canadians in.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to also be speaking on Bill C-24, an act to implement the free trade agreement between Canada and the Republic of Panama, and the agreement on labor cooperation between Canada and the Republic of Panama, and the agreement on the environment between Canada and the Republic of Panama. And as the members of this House are aware, the Liberal Party supports this bill. The Liberal Party supports free trade, supports free trade agreements, and has provided leadership on that regard over many decades. So this has been an interesting bill to prepare my thoughts, because yes, this is a free trade agreement and we support that. And in addition, le Panama représente le plus...
Panama is the largest market for Canada in Central America.
Il convient également...
It should also be pointed out that the Panama Canal, which is key to international trade, is being expanded, and this work is worth $5.3 million. This will create new opportunities for Canadian markets in the construction industry, environmental area, and project management.
Here. But I want to keep in perspective in this debate that in 2009, the total of Canada's exports to Panama were about $90 million. So $90 million is important to those companies that are selling goods and services to Panama. I don't want to minimize that. $90 million is $90 million, and it could grow. Could grow 30%, 50%, 100%, in which case it would be $180 million. But the basis of the remarks that I would like to make today are that, notwithstanding that the Canada-Panama Free Trade Agreement is something that we support, and it's a small positive step forward, I want to put that in, frame that by looking at what is the purpose of the free trade agreement, and is this free trade agreement really a good choice of Canada's resources compared with some of the other things that the government, the civil service, the parliamentarians could be doing to accomplish those very same objectives. And my conclusion is no, this is a distraction. It is yet another free trade agreement with a minor trading partner, as we've seen the Conservative government notch up numbers with other minor trading partners and saying, yes, we have another free trade agreement. But that seems like it is optics over substance. And the substance of what this government needs to do to accomplish the goals, which I would contend would be a vital and thriving economy that provides jobs and benefits for Canadians, that objective is not being met by this government. And to spend time on how many small, minor free trade agreements can we sign is a displacement of what this government should be doing. So where is the strategic thinking, I guess, is my conclusion. This has not been strategic thinking. This has been optics. And so I want to go back to what is the objective here. So if the objective is a strong, thriving economy that creates jobs and benefits for Canadians, the facts are quite clear that this Conservative government has quite a history of mismanaging our economy, from decisions taken early on to greatly increase the amount of government spending while reducing government revenues and throwing us as a country into deficit even before the recession came. to not recognizing the recession when it was upon us, and in fact saying Canada's not in a recession and won't be in a recession. There's been a record of mismanagement by this government. And one of the unhappy effects of that mismanagement is that today Canada still has 525,000 fewer full-time jobs than we had before the recession. And yes, members from the opposite benches have been throwing out numbers of job growth, but they have been measuring that from the trough of the recession, which is not a metric that represents the kind of progress that Canada wants to make. From before the recession to today, we want to see a country that is building jobs, building its economy, and having the kind of fundamentals that allow Canadians to have jobs and feed their families. So we have a 525,000 net fewer full-time jobs thanks to this government's policies at a time that our population has increased by more than 1 million citizens. So not surprisingly, our unemployment rate is much higher than it was when this Conservative government first took office. In fact, at 7.6%, it's 2 percentage points higher. So we're seeing somewhat of a jobless recovery. Now, how is the free trade agreement with Panama going to help that? $90 million of exports to Panama. What was the total trade, the total exports of Canadian goods and services, of Canadian businesses in and around 2009, 2010? Well, it was actually some, I have the figure here, it was some $339 billion worth of exports. So 90 million versus 330 some billion. The exports to Panama turn out to be something like 0.3/100% of our total exports. 0.3/100% is $3 on every $10,000 that Canadians export. So should we not be signing free trade agreements? No, that's not my point. My point is, are we really focusing on the key success factors for our economy and the job creation that is the goal of this? And to spend some 3 years negotiating a free trade agreement with Panama, I see as being a distraction from some of the much more significant things that this government could and should be doing to accomplish that goal. Unfortunately, we're going backwards with many of the government's policies, and I'll mention one other one, and that is that the impacts on small and medium-sized businesses of this government have not been positive. Industry Canada's analysis shows that in their last 20-year analysis of job creation, it was not only the small and medium-sized businesses that created the jobs. On a net level, they created all of the net new jobs in Canada, all. And in fact, large businesses were net job loss losers by 5%. 5% of the jobs created by large businesses were lost on a net basis in that 20-year period up to 2003, which is, as far as I know, the last analysis of a 20-year period that Industry Canada has done. So what does that tell us? If we want jobs in Canada, we need to work with the small and medium-sized businesses. But what has the Conservative government done? Unfortunately, it's the opposite. The tax rates for large businesses have gone down from 22.5% now down to 15% for the large businesses, the ones that are net job losers. And what has been the corresponding reduction in tax rates for small and medium-sized businesses? Well, actually nothing. There's been no reduction. What there has been is an increase in their costs through an increase of EI payroll tax rate. Although the Liberals, the business community, really the economists across Canada argued that taxing employment is the wrong thing to do at a time of of economic challenge in a recession, the Conservative government went ahead and did just that and added $1.2 billion in EI payroll tax increases. So we have a situation where we have a jobless recovery. We have the job engines, small and medium-sized businesses, essentially being ignored by this government. Industries that are big job creators, like tourism, have been mismanaged by the Conservative government, unfortunately. Tourism is an incredibly vital and important industry for the small and medium-sized businesses. But we're falling behind. Canada, even though we're recognized as the #1 tourist destination, we have fallen from being 7th in the international competition for overnight visitors to 15th. So we are losing market share dramatically. And under this government's 6 years, we've seen a lot of that decline. And why is that declining? Well, the tourist industry representatives have some answers to that. And it is policies of the Conservative government for the most part. Yes, there are some factors that have been outside the government's control, but the government did control its decision to slap a visa on Canada's fastest growing tourist market, Mexico, with no consultation, upsetting an important trade partner and dropping the number of tourists from Mexico substantially, some 35%, through that act. This government has been told time and time again that its fees and taxes at airports make air travel uncompetitive and drive tourists to the United States airports on the other side of the border, very costly to businesses along the border in Canada. But there has, as far as I know, there's been nothing done to address those really cash grabs through the airports. And in fact, we're seeing another increase, another addition to the cash grab at Vancouver's International Airport, with an additional $5 being added to the airport improvement fee that all travelers will be paying. Skills and trades training. We know that there is a serious mismatch between the kinds of skills and trades and training happening in Canada and the jobs today and in the future. Some of the key analysts on this issue are telling us that within about 5 years, Canada will likely have 1.5 million jobs without people that are suitable to fill them, and 1.5 million people without jobs. So where is the overall strategy to address that? Well, this is a government, unfortunately, that's ideologically against having a hand in providing a leadership on issues like this. Let's leave it to the provinces. They can solve it. Each of the 13 provinces and territories can battle this out themselves, because this federal government does not want to provide leadership with some kind of a framework to address a national problem that impacts national productivity and undermines Canada's prosperity, undermines our economy and the jobs that the economy, a thriving economy can produce. So, given these challenges that this government faces and has created, is the answer a free trade agreement with a country to which we sell $3 out of every $10,000 of our export goods and services? Well, I would argue that if that same time and energy had been put into managing more effectively the relationship that Canada has with our most important trading partner, the United States, there would be a far greater return on effort. And let's just look at what's happening with our relationship with the United States in terms of trade. Our trade with the U.S. exceeds $1.4 billion every single day. And that compares with $210 million on both sides of the ledger between Canada and Panama in a year. So one would think that focusing on the United States and our trade relation, really being present where decisions are made in the United States, making sure that our case is understood, using the department's resources that are instead doing free trade agreements with countries like Colombia, Jordan, Panama, and focusing on where it can really count. That's what organizations do when they want to achieve a result. They focus on the key factors that will drive that result. But what we have here is a government that wants to notch up some more numbers. Hey, we have more free trade agreements than you guys had, as if that actually is going to be delivering on the result that Canadians need, which is a thriving economy and jobs. 80% of Canada's economy depends on access to foreign markets, and our largest trading partner, of course, is the United States. That's 75% of Canada's merchandise exports go to the United States. 75%. Panama is not even on the list if one looks at the countries that are important to the top countries of importance for Canada's exports. And how are we doing with our U.S. exports? Well, our share, Canada's share of United States imports have fallen in a great number of sectors. In furniture, we used to have 25% share. It's down to 9.1%. In electrical equipment, Canada used to have a 10% share of U.S. imports. We now have just over half of that, 5.4%. Textiles, we used to sell 6.8% of the imported textile the United States imported. Now it's down to 2.2%. Printing, fallen from 30.3% down to 17%. Fabricated metal, 18% used to be, drops down to 10%. Rubber and plastics used to be 31%, down to 19.9%. So what's been happening? We are losing market share with our biggest trading partner that accounts for 75% of Canadians' export sales. But this government has its talented people off running around organizing a free trade deal with Panama. What was the rush for that? Why not spend that time instead working on recovering some of our market share in these other core markets and these other core products and services?
Good idea.
And at the same time, this Prime Minister has insulted the United States President and the United States people, who wanted to take the time they needed to properly study a potential thousands of kilometers pipeline on American soil through some environmentally sensitive areas. Did Canada say we will respect the right of Americans to study the costs and benefits and the risks and make a decision? No. This Prime Minister went out and postured, basically insulting our largest trading partner, and said, if you won't take our crude oil without any question, well, we'll go sell it somewhere else. Well, hey, that was very diplomatic. That's going to really help in Canadians' need to have the United States be a cooperative trading partner. But this government is essentially amateur hour when it comes to trade, and that has been shown from day one. The Prime Minister has been blindsided by protectionist policies from the United States. The Conservatives were surprised by the initial Buy America provisions in the 2008 stimulus package. They negotiated a solution to that, which lasted all of a year, and then Buy America was back. Surprise, surprise to the Canadian government's administration again. This Prime Minister and his minister were taken off guard by the surprise announcement of a maritime commission that is researching and potentially will be imposing fees and tariffs at our ports on U.S. goods coming through Canada. There's a new border tax that Canadians have to pay. These are all costly and undermining of our trade with America. But we're busy doing a free trade agreement with Panama. So I would, whether it is China and the complete and utter amateurishness of our Prime Minister and this government's relationship with China, which put Canada back about 4 years in terms of getting its assured destination status, which was important for tourism. We lost about 4 years of that tourism boost. The kinds of insults that this Prime Minister delivered in public to the Chinese leadership, our trade with China is languishing. Other countries are taking advantage of the great growth and the economic well-being of China. Canada has been stagnant. And in fact, Canada has a 4-to-1 trade deficit with China. So for every $4 that we spend buying goods from China, we only receive $1 in selling them our goods. But have we had a strategy focused on that key success factor for Canada's trade? No, we haven't. We're busy negotiating free trade agreements with Panama and posturing about our natural resources.
Order, please. Order. The honourable member may add a few more comments in questions and comments. Her time has elapsed. Questions and comments? L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Saint-Maurice-Champlain. I wish to thank the honourable member for her speech. She talked a little bit about the environment when she stated that more importance is given to free trade countries with certain countries rather than accentuate our relationship with the U.S. Does the member think that our current government is using this rather indifferent attitude toward the environment to get contracts in countries that don't give much importance to either the environment or to the working conditions of human beings? I wish to thank my colleague for that question because, of course, the environment is very important. There are issues that are very concerning when it comes to the environment and the regulations about that in Panama.
The United States Trade Representative noted in a study, a Congressional Research Service study, that Panama faces a number of challenges in protecting its environment as it supports its economic population and growth. And these concerns included deforestation, loss of wildlife, threats to water quality, and etc. And it also includes the poaching on territory, protected territory that is under the stewardship of the Embera First Nations. Some 7,000 hectares have been moved in on by settlers with the Panamanian government being complicit in that. And so I ask this government, what was the hurry? Why not try and settle some of these regulatory improvements that are needed before and have bargaining power for our free trade agreement?
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Confused here. The member of the third party was saying that this is just a distraction, and yet they're going to support it. So I'm not really sure. Are they going to support this? Are they going to support the fact that Panama is a tax haven, that there's money laundering that goes on there with drug traffickers, that by taking measures towards eliminating trade deals with tax havens, that we could recoup lost revenue of tax dollars? So what I got from this member was that if the economy is a powerful one, the Liberal Party is willing to get into bed with them, damn the negative aspects, just because it'll bring economic growth or economic money. And I think this shows where this party stands with its principles. It flip-flops. Basically, it's not willing to stand on principle for the environment, against money laundering. It's saying, well, you know, we're going to support this, even though it's doing bad things, because it helps the economy in some way. And I think Canadians are tired of this.
The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm disappointed at that kind of rhetoric because really we're talking about something that's important to Canadians' lives, their jobs, their ability to support their families, and I think my debate has been clear that it's as though the Conservative government is like a chef that has prepared a very tiny little snack of a few peanuts and spent the same time during which it could have that chef could have prepared a healthy meal for a family. Do you throw away the peanuts? No, you eat the peanuts, but you say, why did they waste their time with those peanuts when we're hungry and we wanted the meal and you could have provided the meal? That's what we're saying, Madam Speaker. Free trade is positive, but we believe that these resources could have far, far better been utilized in managing our trading arrangement with the United States, with China, or managing some of the key failures of this government on the economy itself.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Well, here at the NDP, we actually look at the ingredients before we prepare a meal, rather than giving carte blanche to putting whatever ingredient into the meal that's being prepared, like the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. So we look at the ingredients and we look at the bad things and we make propositions. Unfortunately, the third party and the government rejected propositions we made to this legislation in the past. Propositions that would have improved the legislation in terms of the environment, which the member spoke to, and yet the party doesn't act when it comes to time to voting. Or on tax havens, we also made propositions which the third party and the government rejected. So I find it a bit rich for the member to stand up and talk about peanuts and good meals and healthy meals for Canadians when it's not really looking at the ingredients of the food it's preparing.
The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we know that the Speaker of representing the NDP is with a party that's ideologically against free trade agreements, and then will find ways to express that. So I don't take from what the member's saying very much in terms of moving the debate forward. I mean, the reality is that it is positive for those farmers, those growers of pulses, of potatoes, who would like to see the tariffs that Panama has placed on those goods removed so that they could potentially sell more to Panama. That means that farmer could increase the size of their farm area and could increase their profits and could possibly put a family member through school. But apparently, unfortunately, the member is too adhering to an ideology to really think about the people. So I think that it's useful to have free trade agreements. My view, though, is that this has been a distraction. But now that this government has spent 3 years doing that, why would we flush it away? That makes no sense, and that's not in the interest of Canadians, not in the interest of the jobs that depend on those industries that, even in a small way, will be benefited by this free trade agreement.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Well, I fail to see ideology in the fact of protecting the environment or protecting workers' rights, or protecting the fact that certain countries are havens for money launderers, and to make propositions to change those things. I don't see that as ideology. I see that as common sense. And so I find it troubling that the third party continually flip-flops on these issues. She talks on one hand of helping the farmers in Panama and helping the poor in Panama, but on this side is unwilling to implement changes to the legislation that would protect those people in Panama and those families, those poor families in Panama, would protect the Panamanian environment, would go towards that, would put pressure on that trading partner to adhere to international standards. So I find this troubling that she's willing to write this off as ideology, and I think that's symptomatic of the third party, that when push comes to shove, they're willing to give up their principles for the sake of an easy buck.
The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate that that the member has his position that he's now reiterated 3 times. So there was not much new in that particular question. And my request to this Conservative government, really out of the debate today, is to take a look at what they are doing to undermine small business growth in this country with their EI tax increases, what they're doing to choose large businesses over small businesses by doing major corporate tax reductions for the large businesses and nothing but a slap in the face for small businesses. I would ask the government to really